Good evening and welcome to tonight's council meeting. I'd like to call the council meeting to order. First thing I'm going to ask for is agenda changes.
Staff have no changes to present to the agenda this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Next, we'll open up for public forum. Is there anybody here wishing to address the council this evening? Seeing nobody in the audience, I'm going to go ahead and close the public forum and go on to ask for the approval of the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, if there are no questions or discussion on the consent agenda, I would move to have it approved as submitted.
Second.
Have the motion and the second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Consent agenda is approved. We have no unfinished business this evening, so we're gonna move on to new business. And the first item is consideration of check number 117614 to C Squared Signs. We always call these out because that's Councilman Campbell's business.
Mr. Mayor, again, did you want?
Nope, go for it.
Again, if there is no discussion or questions on this, I would make a motion to approve check number 117614 to C Squared Signs for $100 and approve ordinance number 2021-AP-09A.
Second.
Have the motion and the second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Next item is discussion of participation in CDBG. It's a CV3 program. Ethan will probably start us off on that.
As you can see from the materials provided in your packet, the CDBG stands for Community Development Block Grant, and then Coronavirus 3. This is a program offered through the Kansas Department of Commerce. The city can apply for these funds, but then these funds would actually go to our business community for related expenditures. We have some representatives from Ranson City Code here, and I would love to turn that over to them to talk a little bit more about the program and the services they can offer. And then we can open it up for more discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ethan. Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I'm Rosemary Saunders with Ranson Financial. Also with me tonight is Crystal Hennon, who is one of my colleagues that works with me in the grants department there at Ranson. Larry Kleeman and Ethan had spoke late in April when the funds became available. This is the third round for the COVID funding for business grants. It's going to be business grants only this time. They're going to handle this round a little bit different. The previous two rounds, it was a first come, first serve basis. In counties and cities that were interested in applying for those funds submitted the applications, and then they went as far as the money was allotted, and then the rest of the communities and counties were basically shut out at that point. We learned the first part of April that an additional $4.5 million would be available to assist businesses that were impacted by the pandemic last year. They made some changes in it that they were going to, one, have an application period. It opens May 1, closes June the 1st at 5 o'clock. The application is online. The maximum grant that a community can apply for is $150,000, which would also include administration dollars to complete all the paperwork on the grant. One of the caveats of the application is you have to hold a public hearing to inform the public that you're applying for these federal funds to assist your businesses. If you're awarded the grant, then we would work with your office staff to get a list of businesses here in town. They would complete an application and provide documentation. We would come back to the city council and ask for award of the grant amounts to these businesses, submit it to the Department of Commerce. They in turn would review the documentation and process the drawdowns through. We would have 12 months to complete from start to finish from award of the grant funds. and they would like 50% of the funds expended within the first 90 days if possible. So this is not going to be sit on your hands type money. This is going to move very fast once the state reviews and awards those applications. And that's so.
You said there was 4.5 million available?
Right.
And you just alluded to something about not sitting on these funds. And do you have applicants that do this often, that are awarded a grant and then they just kind of sit on it?
Actually, there are some that was in the very first round, approximately a year ago, that they still have not expended all their funds yet to the businesses. And that we currently have 9 from the first 2 rounds, and we are getting ready to close the final 2 out. So we have moved very quickly in getting funds out to those businesses. You can take reimbursables all the way to March 1 of last year, so things like your insurance payments, non-city-owned utilities, inventory, PPE, that, like restaurants had to do in order to reopen again. Your business was impacted because you're a restaurant, you could only do carryout or curbside delivery if that's offered here in town. Have all of that documentation and would have copies of invoices and checks, stating, to be able to restock your inventory. And so, we've done quite a variety of businesses over those 9 grants. They haven't all been restaurants, so we've had a dental office, insurance office, like a Genesis or a YMCA type facility, coffee shops, let's see, chiropractor, just to name a few.
This might be a tough question for you to answer. Of those 9 businesses, what kind of funds do those 9 businesses represent on these blocks?
No, 9 cities. So we're talking probably between those 9 cities and counties that we had funds awarded to, we're probably talking in the neighborhood of at least 60 to 75 businesses that we impacted with these grant funds.
Right.
And the grants ranged anywhere from a little over 4,000 all the way up to 15,000, depending on what city it was and how fast the city wanted to get the funds out to the businesses.
Question for Ethan, do we have businesses that have looked at applying for this grant money?
This, because it's a vehicle, goes through the city first, kind of, as opposed to like the PPP program where they apply directly, for that. I think most, with the exception of maybe 4 employers in our town, fall in that 50 or under category. And this is so open, as they mentioned, as far as that you can use it for wages, non-city utilities, inventory, anything going all the way back to March 1st, that I would think, we know our local business, Main Street businesses had impact. And this is kind of, in my opinion, low-hanging fruit for them to be able to hopefully undo some of that, negative economic impact that COVID had. And it's really a nice vehicle because instead of them jumping through that, they're more working with us as the city,
So do
applying
we
directly.
market this to the businesses around town?
Oh, absolutely.
And we would help you do that too. I don't know how many of you are familiar with CDBG. There are only 2 basically entities that can apply for funds in the state of Kansas in their cities and counties. So businesses cannot apply directly to Department of Commerce for the funds. They would have to come to the city. And you basically are sponsoring the application on their behalf.
Okay, thank you.
Basically, if we're awarded this grant, we're eligible to bring $150,000 right here locally to our local businesses
That is correct.
that have employees below 50.
Yeah, there's
I think
two categories, 0 to 5, and then 6 to 50.
Okay. I think it'd be a good program for us to bring forward.
And I was just saying, a barber shop or hair salons, daycare. I mean, every community has at least those type of businesses that were impacted, that had to close for at least some period of time due to COVID.
And the form has all the requirements that have to be met for
Yes.
those businesses.
And we would make sure, Crystal has been my boots on the ground, if you want to call a meeting with the business owners specifically, and getting all of the documentation to make sure that each of the businesses are qualified before we would come back to council and say, we have these 5 businesses or we have these 10 businesses that we would like you to award dollars to, and make sure that everything is all the i's are dotted and t's are crossed before you make the award.
Now, in reading that, tell me if I'm wrong, but the way I read that, if a business comes to us for that, do we pay that ahead and then we're reimbursed for that?
Basically, they provide, no, you don't, we obtain the documentation from the business owner. You do the award. We send all of the information to Topeka. With that information, we complete what is called a request for funds, and that would be the money to the businesses. Once the money is deposited into the city's account, then you would issue a check to each of those businesses. They in turn would sign an agreement stating that, yes, they will use those funds as what was stipulated in the application, and sign off on that.
Ethan, do you need action from the council on this?
Yeah, you have the proposal, so there is an actual, it's applying for a grant, and just due to our staffing and then Ranson's financial expertise just with the program and the CDBG, of having them assist the city. You can see there, the grant writing is not allowed to be part of the overall grant cost, where grant administration is an allowable expense of those grant funds. But, the dollar amount there, I think $1,250 is the not exceed figure is a small price for the city to pay to bring potentially this kind of impact to our downtown and surrounding businesses.
That way, the full award goes to them.
Can I ask you about the timing again? We have May 1st to June 1st to make application, and that's with a public hearing.
Right.
And then from that point,
Then the city will, the state will review all the applications that they've received, and they hope to have them all awarded by July 1 or shortly thereafter. We're successful with it. City will receive an email letter stating you've been awarded these funds, and then we would move forward with executing a contract with the state of Kansas for this project specifically, and then get with the city on which businesses that you know of right off, and then get the word out to other businesses that these funds may be available if they complete all the documentation. And hopefully within 30 days, we would be coming back to the city, maybe with the first round.
and then there's, your target is 50% in 90 days?
Yeah, that's what the state would like to have done, because they'd really like to see these funds moved.
And then with the other 50%, is there a deadline?
Then within the 12 months, it's a 12-month contract period.
Okay, I didn't understand that.
And that it's a little bit different than the regular CDBG program, which is usually 24 months. But since this is basically money that they're wanting to get out to the public as soon as possible to these businesses, it's a 12-month time frame.
Okay, thank you.
Now, does this cover just tangibles, or does it include intangibles like business lost because of COVID?
I'm sure some of the business has lost, but we have to tie it to concrete items like the utilities, the
Tangibles.
insurance,
Okay.
property tax, inventory. So because we actually have to have an invoice that documents that, and then the check to show that this is what they purchased. And so it's basically a reimbursable program.
Okay. Any other questions? With that, I'd make a motion to approve staff to continue working with Ransom Financial Group on application materials and to set a public hearing for May 24th, 2021 at 7 PM to consider an application to be submitted to the Kansas Department of Commerce for Small Cities Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, funds under the CV3 program.
Second.
Heard the motion, a couple of seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Thank you.
You're most welcome. And one other thing is, once we complete the application, the city will receive an entire copy of the application that is submitted, along with the notification from the Department of Commerce that they have received that application. So you will have that information in hand.
So if we have a building that's deteriorated during COVID, that would be an expense.
This sounds a little bit like a sticky
I'm trying.
situation.
I'm trying.
That's a little over half what we need.
Yeah.
Rosemary, thanks for coming.
You are most welcome, and I'm sure that you're pretty aware that the first parts of the American Rescue Plan monies should be deposited sometime this week in the city's account. So please be making some plans on how to expend that on some of the infrastructure and that you can utilize here in the city.
I'm sure we've got homes for all of it.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, thanks
I
for
don't
being
know
here.
of any community that doesn't have a little bit of a wish list to take care of. All right, thank you again for allowing us to come tonight and talk to you about this.
Thanks for coming. to
Thank
Halstead.
you all, have a good evening.
Ethan, I'll go ahead and send the publication to the newspaper.
Okay.
I told her I'd have it in by tomorrow by noon.
Okay.
And if the RFPs, if you wanna go ahead and start sending those out too, and you might just have them have it before your next meeting.
Okay.
Awesome,
Thanks.
thank you.
All right, thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Have a good evening. Okay, let's move on to everybody's favorite topic, consideration of proposals for 204 Main. We'll let Ethan bring that one up.
Right. So after the council opted for demolition and we'll say stabilization of the walls that would be exposed through the demolition process, I did reach out to 5 contractors. Was hopeful that we'd have 3, ended up hearing today that the third contractor that we thought was gonna submit a bid could not get it in their work schedule, as busy as they are. So we only have the 2 that are in front of you as handouts, and then 2 declined to bid at all on the work. So you can see the varying price points. Both of them did submit separated costs as well. Talking to other cities that have kind of gone through a similar process, I think it's advantageous for the city to engage one contractor for the entire scope of work. And that way we can keep this project moving, not, do demolition and then be waiting for more bids and all that to come in. It's also, construction is very busy right now. So getting someone actually lined up and on a time frame to do work, I think will help expedite the overall issue. I know the adjoining property owners have been dealing with this building and the issues it's presented for many years. So anything we can do to keep this moving along. So in awarding the entire scope, you have Sutherland Builders, and their price came to the 246, 135. You can kind of see the scope. The email there is just, you can see, I did ask both contractors to talk about their similar projects they've done, and then you have my handwritten note there, I just sent a separate email. They believe they should be able to start in the next couple of weeks, if the city were to select them. And then you have Commerce Construction, which would have to be adjusted for, their bid actually included sales tax. But they were at 269, 435. And again, you can see that they have similar project experience as well. Might be a little more even with the actual demo and facade rework. And then their anticipated mobilization was 8 to 10 weeks out. So at this point, I guess I'll rely on Brad on kind of the best way we know, even from talking to the engineers, that as that building is exposed, we're either gonna run into things we didn't anticipate, or there's possibilities for some of the things they included in their plans, as a belt and suspenders, like new footings, that the existing, slab might be able to support a new wall without a new footing being poured. So we kind of need the ability to work with this. It's not one of our traditional building projects, I would say, where we had to define this, and this. I think we know the overall deliverable that the city is expecting, but the details of this are gonna, I think, definitely be changing, especially once they open that building up and just see what's there and what condition things are in. So that was the information I have for you all on the two vendors we had approach us on wanting to tackle 204 Main.
When you, Ethan, when you mentioned footings to support a new wall, where would there be a new wall?
It's basically the metal stud, what you create new exterior walls.
But that would be supported by the existing wall, would it not?
Well, the new wall will be on the north face of the old hardware store or the south face
I
of the
understand that.
chiropractic. And those walls are actually gonna be really light per lineal foot, because they'll be steel stud. And I think they're gonna do metal skin on them or something. That's gonna be a lot lighter than conventional stud, or stud frame construction. So,
We're not gonna do like a stucco finish on the existing walls?
They didn't, the plans just did what they considered to be the cheapest. Again, that's something the city in the details, depending on how we word this, can.
there's two things that I noticed on Commerce's, bid. They don't have builder's risk insurance. You can speak to that. That doesn't make me feel good. Also, they don't have abatement for asbestos figured in, but the other company does. And that, right now, we know that could equate to thousands of dollars very quickly.
According to Ethan, the only asbestos in that building is the floor tiles,
I think there wasn't a
to
lot.
our knowledge.
Well, we actually had a survey done though, correct?
Yeah,
Yes, we did.
As far as that existing front wall, in talking to Commerce about that, the front wall is stable from the steel beam, I'm gonna call it the header, the steel header above the windows down. But in reading this, they're looking at taking that entire front wall out.
yeah, that's what MKAC's plans called for. They basically said to take the entire, and so everybody bid off the MKAC's plans. That's not to say that,
Then
we
if-
can work with them through the demo and say, if that's what the council wants to do, contacting them. That's why I said this is gonna be
Well, I don't want to delay this, but one thing that if we're going to do it that way, that we would need to stipulate with the contractor is that front wall be disassembled, taken down, and the stones kept so that they could be utilized in the new construction of the front to match the existing structures to either side.
A while back, we did a quick sketch with Ethan, something I foresaw, so we don't have that gap tooth effect. I'm thinking
what I want to
possibly a
avoid.
low wall with maybe a cap on it and possibly in the middle, maybe a nice wide gate with maybe, Martin builds something, a nice wrought iron looking thing.
I
I
think,
just got some sketches.
I think the finished product over there, is probably design consideration and everything can come in after we get the
Sure.
base project taken care
Yeah,
of.
that's the thing, that right now critical is getting it out of there so that it's not a problem for the two neighbors.
That way we've got some time for that final design and maybe you can bring something forward to the
Sure.
council, George.
I'm with Sam, though. I'd like to keep that stone facade on the front of that
Absolutely.
building, just
I-
to, it'll save on material costs later when we get to the design phase.
Well, and it may be one of those things, we could bring Russ from MKEC back out and say, hey, can we stop here? And, without any major modifications to their plans.
And if we do that, that shouldn't add anything to this price. That would end up being potentially less work.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
You had mentioned Commerce was 8 to 10 weeks out,
yes.
and Sutherland, where were they at?
They thought
so.
next couple of weeks.
Okay,
So they were waiting on one project that they thought would be delayed. So it wasn't a 100% guarantee, but he thought like 2 to 3 weeks for mobilization was his best guess.
Did they give you any idea from start to finish how long it would take?
No. And that's kind of the, as I say, I know the MKC plans, for instance, had, that CMU just kind of to block the gap tooth, but again, the city's not beholden, and I think we can, if we identify a contractor and get them started, that's something we can visit with them as part of kind of an ongoing project of, okay, now that we're getting closer, let's really talk
Okay,
how to finish this.
then I would make a motion to approve staff to go forward with Sutherland Builders to get that building taken down as provided, with the stipulation to save the stone on the front of the building for possible future use, to an amount not to exceed $246,135 as per the bid contract.
I'll second.
Have the motion in a couple of seconds to, get this project moving forward. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. And Ethan, I think that if Russ will come and take a second look at that, and, if he does, why don't you, we'll get a hold of Sam, myself, and anybody else that wants to meet over there and take a look at coming down just to that header.
And my reason for that, not only would it save the front of that building, but it could also help in the reconstruction of that, or save reconstruction of the stairwell to some point. So it's worth looking at.
Oh, I agree. We'll just keep that project moving. Well, that's gonna conclude new business for this evening. Moves us on to, an executive session, and I'll entertain that motion now.
All right, Mr. Mayor, I move that the Halstead City Council recess into executive session for 20 minutes to discuss contract negotiations pursuant to the consultation with an attorney on matters that would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship, exception KSA 75-4319B2, and ask, in addition to the governing body, the following persons join the governing body in executive session: the city manager and the city attorney. The open meeting and governing body to reconvene in the city council chamber at 7:50 PM.
Second.
Have the motion and the second to adjourn to an executive session. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those same sign. We will be going into executive session. We are back from our executive session. Is there any action to be taken as a result of? Seeing no movement from the council, we will move on. And the next section is report section. And we'll start with governing body, and tonight I'm gonna start with you, Denise.
I've got nothing this week except Happy Nurses Week and Happy Nurses Day to all the nurses that live and work within the city of Halstead.
Well, I want to commend the city staff for the magnificent job they did this past weekend on the veterinary work, getting the dogs tagged and shots given. Really good attitude to the people, and we just really appreciate it, and that's an awfully nice benefit for all of the citizens of Halstead.
Mike? George?
Well, it's nice to hear mowers running all over town, people mowing the yards, and don't blow your grass in the gutter.
Ed?
Nothing, sir.
Okay, now it's back on me, and Carlos and Ethan have given me a couple of proclamations to read this evening. The first one will be for Police Week. Whereas the Congress and the President of the United States have designated May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day, and the week in which it falls is Police Week. And whereas the International Association of Chiefs of Police has declared law enforcement officer safety and wellness a top priority, and the IACP's Center for Officer Safety and Wellness promotes the importance of individual, agency, family, and community safety and wellness awareness, and whereas the members of the Halstead Police Department play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of the citizens of Halstead, and whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the problems, duties, and responsibilities of their police department, and that members of our police department recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, by protecting them against violence or disorder, and by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression or intimidation. And whereas the police department of the city of Halstead has grown to be modern and scientific law enforcement agency which unceasingly provides a vital public service. Now therefore I, Dennis Travis, Mayor of the city of Halstead, call upon all citizens of Halstead and upon all patriotic, civil, and educational organizations to observe the week of May 9th through the 15th, 2021 as Police Week, in which all of our people may join in commemorating police officers past and present, who by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities have rendered a dedicated service to their communities, and in doing so, have established for themselves an inviolable and enduring reputation for preserving the rights and security of all citizens. Signed this 10th day of May, 2021. And we'll move on to an EMS proclamation. And their theme is Ready Today, Preparing for Tomorrow. Whereas the emergency medical services is a vital public service, and whereas the members of emergency medical services teams are ready to provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and whereas access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury, and whereas emergency medical services has grown to fill a gap by providing important out-of-hospital care, including preventative medicine, follow-up care, and access to telemedicine, and whereas the emergency medical services systems consists of first responders, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, emergency medical dispatchers, firefighters, police officers, educators, administrators, pre-hospital nurses, emergency nurses, emergency physicians, trained members of the public, and other out-of-hospital medical care providers. And whereas the members of emergency medical services teams, whether career or volunteer, engage in thousands of hours of specialized training and continuing education to enhance their life-saving skills. And whereas it is appropriate to recognize the value and accomplishments of emergency medical services providers by designating Emergency Medical Services Week now. Now therefore, I, Dennis Travis, Mayor of the City of Halstead, Kansas, in recognition of this event, do hereby proclaim the week of May 16th through the 22nd, 2021, as Emergency Medical Services Week, with the theme EMS Strong, Ready Today, Preparing for Tomorrow. I encourage the community to observe this week with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities. Signed this 10th day of May, 2021.
The police and the E EMS.
We are very fortunate to have the level of services that we do in a community our size, and I'm very proud of what those guys do. So, with that, we'll move to Ethan for the manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Departmental and city activities for the month of April have been as follows. Police reported 51 traffic stops, 106 calls for service, and 11 criminal cases. Police staff also participated in the Family Fun Night event and are finalizing details of the potential to switch to a new vendor for body and vehicle cameras. Fire reported 8 calls for service, including 1 auto accident, 1 grass fire, and 3 auto aid calls for structure fires. Chiefs Van Scoik and Hoffman concluded the hazmat course that was offered in-house and saw 9 students test, including 3 from Halstead Fire. The department completed the sale of the old UTV and the trailer to Colwich Fire Department and have picked up the newer and bigger replacement equipment trailer that was authorized by the council. And Halstead Fire will also be hosting a regional Kansas State Firefighters Association school this coming weekend. EMS reported 29 calls for service, bringing the yearly total to 201 calls. All relicensing has been completed through the Kansas Board of EMS. EMS staff are currently evaluating new software and reporting systems to see if any efficiencies or superior costs can be obtained compared to our current vendor, and then looking at credentialing process for the staff related to skills proficiency. Parks and Recreation report that daily maintenance of the softball and baseball diamonds continue, including mowing, both nail and flat dragging, watering, chalking, and painting. Staff coordinated with K's from Halstead High School for their workday, and the K's helped with mulching playground equipment and painting of certain pieces of equipment. Arbor Day was also celebrated with the Halstead Middle School 6th grade class and the planting of a tree on USD 440 property. Soccer season has officially ended, but the city does plan to continue utilizing Williams Park in the future for this activity. Youth baseball and softball signups are now done, and practices will begin next week for that sport. Utility maintenance contractors came out to do gel coat on the water slide at the pool. This was warranty work from a project they did last year and had some issue with the material they used. And then pool chemicals have been ordered for the season, so we were fortunate. Apparently there's been a run on chlorine and the price has increased substantially in the last few weeks, so we got ours in before that all went down. Director Williams also helped the Safe Routes to School engineering consultant staff on their audit of the walkways and pedestrian traffic in and around the school area as part of that study. Wedgewood Golf Course officially began their fairway mowing and punched and sanded greens. Fertilizer applications were conducted at the course ball fields and soccer fields, and herbicide was applied at the course cemetery ball fields and soccer fields as well. Course has received the majority of the irrigation supplies, but is still waiting on the new controllers for completion of that project. And the course continues to see